everyone, I'm Meredith, and listen, I'm just a girl still stuck in her apartment, still looking for more people to talk to. Writer and producer Ryan McCurdy is joining us to discuss his new virtual and live one-man musical, Whiterock Cliff. But before we get into all of that, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Let's Talk About It YouTube channel. I don't want you missing when new shows come out. And when you do, make sure you hit that little notification bell right there so you never miss an episode. Go ahead, like and subscribe. Ryan and I will wait. No worries. Did you do it? Okay, great. Ryan, thanks so much for joining us. Let's talk about it.
I am very happy to be here with you. Hello. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Ryan. Thanks again. Now, before we get started really quickly and talking about Whiterock Cliff, I want to remind all of our viewers and subscribers, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Let's Talk About It YouTube channel so you don't ever miss a video and you can see more of these episodes. And I'm going to bug you about it at the end. But now, the reason that you're here, Ryan McCurdy, congratulations on this new show, Whiterock Cliff. Now, it's virtual, it's live, it's theater, and we need that right now. But for those who haven't seen it yet, tell us about what the show is about.
It is a one-person show, which is completely designed for this very strange moment in time. And it's based on a much larger six-person show that is written by Ellie Pyle and myself. And the very beginning of this version of it was last year. I mean, we were just a couple of weeks into quarantine, and I remember thinking, you know, like, I'm going to go insane if I don't get to perform at some point. And I was like, I'm going to have to play all the roles, and I'm going to grab this guitar off the wall and sing all the songs if I can't work with my collaborators. And, you know, then it dragged on and dragged on, and it became what we know it to be. And so Martha Good of Good Productions had picked up all of the rights to the show as far as the IP and the songs, and had done that in September of 2020. And obviously our first thought was, in 2021, 2022, how do we bring the six-person version back to the market?
Right.
And then that date kept kind of getting further and further into the future. Right. So I don't remember who it was. Somebody said, what if Ryan just does the show while that's all that we can do? So I called my friends at Funkadelic Studios, and I called my friends at 5 Ohm, and I said, I think we have a crazy plan. I think we can do this. I called Ellie, and she said, I don't see why not. And so what it has become is a solo version of a much larger actor-musician driven show, which is ostensibly about the Appalachian Trail, but is also not at all about the Appalachian Trail. So that's our show.
So I'm going to skip really ahead, and then we'll go back. But do you think one day you'll perform this again as a six-person show, or do you think?
I think we're already well into the plans for what that next six-person version looks like. But it's interesting because now we've really had a chance to dig into the solo version, and I think there's a world where they can run parallel to one another. Obviously, this one is much more about the creative process and about my personal connection to the story. But, you know, if a theater can afford to bring the solo version in, I think it'd be great to be able to offer that. If they can afford to bring all of our friends and music makers in with us, then that's obviously what we want to do as well.
So talk to me about translating the initial show into what it's become now, and you have this hybrid model of performance that it's live, and it's virtual. Now, I would imagine, as for so many audience members and viewers like myself, this is a first for them. Was this a first for you?
Completely a first for me, and as far as we know, pretty much a first for Actors Equity Association as well. I had the one thing I'd asked Martha early on. I said, if we go forward with this, can I please do it live? Because, you know, performing multiple times a week is a muscle, which is very different than recording for streaming. And that's the muscle that's been atrophying this whole pandemic for me. And so it would have been much easier, I bless Martha for this, it would have been much easier to record it and send it out for the same period of time, and you can log on and watch it whenever. She worked for almost, I think, 2.5 months with Actors Equity to figure out what the safety reality was for a show that was both one thing and is also the other.
You are able to perform, and you're performing live 4 times a week. The glaring difference, obviously, is there is no physical audience. but
Correct.
right. But
Yes.
what have you found through this modality of performance that like you didn't expect um that it's like providing you not just with like the first opportunity to work the muscle, but with what else did you not expect about this type of performance?
I I didn't expect to find different ways to feel connected, and there's one really lovely thing about it, which that we've discovered, which is that so the video goes from Funkadelic to our production stage manager, our equity stage manager, Allie York, who is at home on the Upper West Side, goes to her. She is live calling all the camera shifts, of which there's probably hundreds in the 90-minute show. She calls those. It goes back to Funkadelic. But what I see is there's a bunch. There's 3 cameras set around the room, and I move them. They have lots of positions. They tell the story as well as I do, um, uh, and the light changes. It goes from green to red when the camera is live. And I had no idea that that little tiny detail was going to become my lifeline. And every time I am looking into a camera and it goes red, I know that Allie is there. And I know that Allie has created in that moment what the audience is seeing. And that has filled the void. I can't rely on any of my old, I don't want to call them necessarily my bag of tricks or my bad habits, but I can't rely on any of the things that I usually do when I have an audience and I'm doing sort of an autobiographical or solo type show, where it's like you can nod at you can smile and nod at the audience, you can wink at them, you can bring them into it. Sometimes that can dilute the storytelling because you're using the crutch of having the audience to bounce, and this has really forced me to really think about what I'm saying and what the value of it is, and like I deliver what I hope are some interesting universal truths in the show about what the trail is, both literally and metaphorically. And I finish saying them every night, and that's where there'd be an ah or a ha or some response, and in the silence, I'm able to feel it much more deeply, and that's been very nice.
So connecting to the material in a different way, but how do you find that you're connecting to audience members? Because that's what separates theater and live performance, of course, from almost
Right.
anything else.
This beautiful thing I don't know if we expected this to happen or whether this was a nice surprise. I certainly didn't expect to happen. It's that once I turn my phone is actually a major part of the show because it's playing all the other parts that I can't. And so I have it on airplane mode because it's tied into our sound system. And as soon as I turn the airplane mode off, I get the emails and the messages of the people that just finished watching it. So my phone starts ding, 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 ding. So it's this beautiful delayed gratification. And like you and I were talking before we started today, that like I didn't know which day you had seen because I'm not looking at the box office. So there's this beautiful, instead of looking out and knowing who you are selling this material to, it's much more, I'm just trying to do it as honestly and cleanly as possible, and then I get to find out who it was. And I kind of love that because I think a lot of people, when you do a show, especially when you do a show that's very emotionally built like this, I know a lot of people don't know what to say after a show like this, so they'll come up and they'll shake your hand and they'll say, "Oh, that was a great show. You want to get a drink?" And then that's it. But because people don't have the ability to get away with that here, what I'm getting the next day or the day after, I'm getting these beautiful like 6-paragraph emails of people saying, "Hey, this is what this show meant to me," in a way that I don't think I would if we were doing this for an audience or a live audience.
Do you think there's almost you found you gained something not having the audience there?
Yes, I'm always trepidatious to say that this medium gains something because I'm also so hesitant to accept that it is now part of the lexicon.
Right.
But yes, I would absolutely say that it helps me connect with the audience, especially in this difficult material, in a much more long-term, profound way. because there's no escape. You can't just say, I was here, I did my job, or the audience can't say, I was here, I supported you, I don't
Right,
want to talk about this. They have to talk about it to tell you that they saw it.
right,
So,
right. That's so interesting.
yeah.
Also, the audience is usually so much a part of the development of a production. You did this without them, obviously, with the developmental team, with a creative team behind you. But how did you feel like that? Did that absence? How did that shape the final product?
It's in That's a great question because I rely on laughs as an actor, as I know many actors do, and I have had to trust my instincts
Mm,
so much more severely than I've ever had to before. The absence of the live audience has really, obviously my creative team, Mary Chifo, our director, Ellie Pyle, my collaborator, Martha Good and Ali York, they have tried so hard to, like, we rehearsed with them all in Zoom, so
okay.
I could see them across the room staring at me, and they would, when we would finish a scene, they'd say that line landed, that da 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 da. But I'm just having to trust from night to night as I hopefully improve the show, um, trusting my instincts about what's funny and what's not, and what's coming across seriously. And to be honest, I mean, I don't want to paint too rosy of a picture of how this process went. I mean, we had technical catastrophes, if I can be so bold to say. We had them up until we were supposed to open on a Tuesday, and we didn't open until the Thursday because we hadn't even done the whole show all the way through until Tuesday, because there's just so much infrastructure and no one had ever done this infrastructure before. So I was very stressed the whole first and second weeks of performances, and it was only this week that I'm really starting to find it. And I think that's what another thing we've learned is that when you don't have a live audience, it takes much longer, not just technically, but for the actor to find their grounding. The audience in those previews always lifts the performers, and I almost want to say accelerates their process, and that never kicked in here. I never had that moment where all the work had paid off, because every night it just feels like the work is still the work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so interesting about how you've learned to trust your instincts more, and that's got to be invaluable for a performer. But are you still at the end of each performance? Are you missing the sound of applause?
Not as much as I thought I would be. It actually, the without giving the show's ending away, the show ends on a very uplifting, hopeful note, um, depending on how you read it, and it's a sound cue. The show ends with a sound cue, and when the light goes from red to green, and I know that Ali has sent it to credits, um, the sound cue is still going, and so I get to live in the moment just a minute longer, and
Mm.
I don't miss the applause as much as I thought I would, because I'm getting caught up in sort of putting the bow on the show for myself, and then I'm exhausted, and I do kind of leave it on the I leave everything on the floor when I'm done at the end of the show. It does still wear me out, and I think because of that, I'm kind of committing to feeling exhausted and feeling like I've done my job, instead of relishing the dopamine boost of the audience. So
Do you at all miss like uh, the community aspect of theater, where even if it was just you on the stage with the performance, you'd know, well, obviously there would be again this an audience, but there would be your team all around you backstage, front of house. You are really alone.
hmm um, yeah, I missed that part of it 10,000%. There is something very odd that I'm still not used to. We've done it. I mean, I think we've done it 12 times now, through tech and per previews and opening. There's something very odd about finishing it and just putting the instruments, putting the instruments down, and then getting on the elevator, and then getting on the city bike, and then coming back to my apartment. Yeah, there's something very strange about that. And interestingly, the show had a beautiful workshop with bespoke plays in Los Angeles in March of 2020, and that was the last time I had been on stage in a theater piece before the shutdown. And that community, the Bespoke Plays community, very specifically has, at the end of every show, we're at the Pico Playhouse in Beverly Hills, and so at the end of every reading of a workshop, the whole company just goes 2 doors down to this, great neighborhood watering hole. And it was interesting that it's kind of flipped, because on that workshop, Ellie and I were at odds about what this show was, which is something that becomes the truth of this version of it. Ellie we were having this beautiful workshop of this piece that was supposed to be very reaffirming, and Ellie was saying, you're refusing to tell me the truth about the story that you want to tell with this show, and everyone can see that the show doesn't know what its story is. And so we would always get to go to the bar and have these conversations, and just, it's gonna be fine. Oh, the musicians were great, the harmonies were great, and I kept sloughing it off. I'm like, well, the show's gonna be fine. So fast forward to this version, first time on stage after the pandemic started. And so this time it is as honest. I am telling the truth. I did all the things Ellie told me I had to do. And now we don't have the ability to celebrate it. So
oh, that is hard. That's heartbreaking. That's heartbreaking.
But since we were using it as I was using, I don't know if anyone else was, I was using that escape and the community of reassurance to not dig deeper, because everyone just wanted to help. And this one is really making me live in it. So I miss it so much. I want to get back to it now, but this has been valuable for this particular. I think there's shows that are valuable in this time and shows that are not. I don't think every show would benefit from this live virtual model, but I think if you're trying to get to the core of something and you need to be locked in a room to figure it out, this is the best way to do it.
Literally, you
have
to do.
Yeah.
And as we hopefully are getting to a point where theater is supposed to live theater audience is, there was even a pop-up version of that happened last week, and hopefully come the fall, we will be back in the seats there with people on the stage. Virtual is wonderful, but how do you hope that maybe the two can coexist going forward? Do you think they should coexist going forward, or do we need to just get back to all live performance all the time?
This is a conversation we're having. Right. No, that's a good question. And I'm the executive artistic director of a theater in Savannah, Georgia, which is Savannah Rep, and it's South Georgia's only equity house. And we have had that conversation so many times during the pandemic. And I think what we've come up with is that the best thing moving forward is this hybrid model that allows the live experience to go forward in the ways that it always has, and in the ways that only it is able to move people. But streaming is something that we're committing to in a completely different way, because we're suddenly realizing that so many people we want to be our audience, and we keep saying we want to be our audience, don't have the transportation, the financial reality, the time, the family to drive them in the case of our younger potential audience members. So streaming becoming a reality benefits the expansion and the development of our audience, and especially our next generation who are being raised on screens in a very different way. It's something, Lin-Manuel said this about Hamilton coming to Disney Plus. He's like, if I give my work away in this beautifully shot way and one student buys a ticket to come back and see it on the stage, you're trying to get in a way that we've never had to do before. You're getting each young potential lifelong theater goer, you have to get them all one at a time. And if you can move one of them from the screen to the stage, the next time, that's worth it. So that was a long answer, but ultimately I think they can coexist as long as we are aware of what each of their individual values and strengths are, and are also aware of what their drawbacks are.
Mm-hmm. Well, I am very happy just to be getting theater however I can. White Rock Musical is a phenomenal way to get that theater and to see a show. It's on in New York or wherever you are through April 23rd, correct?
That is completely right. We're running through that night, and I keep reading that's a special performance. I'm not yet sure what that means, but if you watch it, you will find out.
And how can people get tickets?
you go to 5ohm.tv. That's 5FIVEOHM.tv/Whiterock-Cliff. You can also go to whiterockcliff.com, and that will put you right to the ticket link as well.
Awesome. Well, guys, this is a show you don't want to miss. It is live, it's virtual, and we need theater now more than ever. Now, before you go and leave me and go get your tickets and we're done talking for the day, again, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Let's Talk About It YouTube channel. Ryan, thank you so much for being here and chatting.
Thank you. I was so excited about this all week. I love your show. I'm glad to be on it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. This has been Let's Talk About It. We'll talk to you next time.